We're back out here once again, and today we're talking about everybody's favorite summertime fishing topic, topwater. And I'm going to give you my method for using your topwater baits in ways you've never even thought about before. Stick around, you don't want to miss this one. Oh, got him. Oh my God, that's a huge fish. Get out of that. You're not getting in the hydrilla, buddy, because I got the good rod and reel for that. I got you, buddy. And here is this video's featured comment. Congratulations! If you would like to have a chance to have your comment featured in an upcoming video, all you've got to do is leave a comment. And now, on with the video. Welcome back to Lowbrow Fishing, and here we are post-spawn for most of the country. Now here in the Deep South, we are already in that summer pattern. That means that topwater is now a viable option every single time you go out to the water. A lot of times it can be cloudy, it can be sunny, it can be windy, it can be rainy, and you can still catch plenty of bass on topwater. On the downside, there are a lot of anglers on the water. We are having pressured fisheries all across the country, and it's only going to continue to get worse. And a lot of times that means topwater is going to be difficult to come by, as though bass dig in a little bit deeper and get a little bit more skittish. But I have a method, I have a system where I use my topwater in a very strategic manner. And I'm using it to get and create bites as I would with any other style of bait. When we think of topwater, we think of it in general terms, right? We think of, well, throw a frog over there in lily pads, throw a topwater spook out in the middle to try to get some bites as a search bait. But we really need to break it down more than that. We need to identify what each particular type of topwater excels at and put them in those types of situations more often so they can produce the way that they were designed to. And first and foremost, we're going to talk about this guy right here. Obviously, this is a poppin' frog. Nice and simple, easy to start with. And I've got this on my frogging setup, which is also my punching setup. This is a 7.6 heavy with a fast action tip. And this has got 50-pound braid, and I've got it to 30-pound fluorocarbon leader. This is going to pull those bass out of whatever they get buried in. This is a winch of a setup, and it's got a winch of a reel. This is a 400 sized Max 40 by Abu Garcia. It's only got the 6.4 to 1 gear ratio, and this is a big honking reel. And what this does is this yoinks those bass out from underneath those lily pads, that hydrilla, that milfoil. This is going to get them out. Now, you don't necessarily need something this heavy duty whenever you're fishing a frog. It's not about fishing the frog. It's about getting them to the boat once you've got them hooked. So that's why you need such a powerful setup, which is why I use my flipping stick. If you've got a flipping stick, 7.3, 7.5, 7.6, in that heavy power, medium fast, or fast action range, that's basically what you're going to be going with. But we've got this poppin' frog here, and this is a Fish Lab poppin' frog. And this was sent to me by my good buddy, Hank, over at Bass Geek. And this thing has caught me, I can't count how many bass this thing has caught me. But I use this in a very particular way. Obviously, I'm going to be throwing it in vegetation. Obviously, I'm going to be working it around big hydrilla flats. But I'm not going to be throwing this necessarily on top of the hydrilla pads and working it to me. Most of the time, I'm going to be using this in those openings in the hydrilla. And a couple of pops, get it to bloop, and let it sit there, right? This I'm working almost the same way as a popper. This to me is a very, very weedless form of a popper, and I'm using it very strategically. I'm looking for those empty places in that hydrilla or the milfoil or the vegetation. I'm putting this bait right in there, and I'm working it in that spot, and then I'll crank it back to the boat, find me another hole, put it in there, almost like pitching and flipping with a topwater frog. Now, if I'm looking to fish in the gunk, right? If I'm looking to fish the absolute slop, well, obviously then I'm going to come across with a regular topwater frog. this is going to be more that walking style frog, right? The one that everybody likes to get walking, like a topwater bait, like a spook or a walking bait. But I use this. I don't really much get them to walk, which is why I use this scum frog. This has only got the one tail on the back of it rather than the two. And this kind of blops across the water like that. And I, kind of get it imitating the way a frog comes through the water. That's what I like about this. And this is what I'm using to come right over the tops of that hydrilla. Your regular topwater frog, this is coming right over the thickest slop. And that's where I like using this. That's where this does the most amount of damage whenever I'm out on the water. Now, moving on, we're going to go to my standard topwater setup. This is what I'm going to be using for most topwater. And you guys have seen this a million times, right? 30-pound braid, 17-pound fluorocarbon leader on a medium heavy fast action rod. Just a regular do-it-all setup, 6.4 to 1 gear ratio rod. I have one that goes up to 7.5. This is my bone colored head and spook. Now, when it comes to working hard plastic topwater baits, like this walking bait, I love a bone color and I love black. Those are the colors that I'm going to be using most of the time. I'll be using bone and I'll be using black. But this is going to be the setup that I use with this walking bait. Now, where am I using this? Well, obviously, this is going to be a search bait. Whenever I'm in more shallow water, I like using this. That doesn't mean you can't use it in deeper water. A lot of guys use these in really deep lakes, and they can call those bass from way, way up. But for me, the waters that I fish, I'm generally in about 10 feet or less. So that makes this a viable option for bank anglers. Even if you're a bank angler, don't sleep on a spook or a walking bait. They can catch you really nice fish. But if I'm fishing something, say, I see some laydowns, I see some blowdowns, I see some timber in the water. Well, to me, that's this guy. That's going to be a buzz bait. And this is just a KVD buzz toad. I don't have anything on it right now because it had a Berkeley Pit Boss, which is my favorite thing to put on this. I get more bites using that than I do a toad, but I'll still put a toad on here from time to time. But this to me is a top water spinnerbait, and I treat it as such. Maybe I'll have a little bit more chop on the water. Maybe I will see a line of timber, and this is what I'm fishing across that line of timber, right? Parallel your boat, and then bring it down just the way you would a spinnerbait. I'm fishing it on that same setup that I fished that walking bait on. So 30-pound braid, 7-foot medium heavy rod. Your do-it-all setup will work just fine. But these, you've got to really work these the right way. Otherwise, you're going to have more trouble with them than you know what to do with, because they don't float. So you have to learn how to feather it right there at the end of the cast to get it to start coming to you, so it doesn't sink and you don't waste half the cast bringing it to the surface, but you don't want it to splash so hard on the surface that it's going to scare everything in the area. So you've got to learn how to feather these. You've got to learn how to get that cast just right so that you know when to engage that reel to get this working. Other than that, it's just a chuck and wind bait. You can make it slower, you can make it faster, you can do some things to it, but I wouldn't pause it too much because, well, these are going to sink like a rock. But again, timber, structure, you want to work around docks, you want to work around a rock pile, you see some brush piles that you want to work across, that's where this is going to excel. To me, this calls those hiding bass out. They're ducked up under structure, they're ducked up under cover, they're ducked up under a log or a dock or a rock pile. That's where this is going to come into play, and that's what I use it for. Now, if there's something a little bit more targeted, like I see a rock pile or I see a laydown, or I'm looking for openings in vegetation right there along the bank as I'm drifting down, well, that's when a popper is going to come into play, right? And you guys know already, this is a Rico popper. This is a great popper. This thing's worked well for me. Again, that bone color and good old Rebel Popper. You cannot go wrong with one of these. Now, pretty much, I'm going to be fishing these on that same type of setup. I'm going to be looking for openings right there along the bank. I'm going to be looking for targeted casts. That's what these excel at. This is one of those you want to pick your area. Almost like you would, say, a Devil's Horse or a Boy Howdy. Those are also great targeted baits that you whenever you're looking for a spot that you want to target, that's where you put that bait and you work it a little bit. You don't necessarily bring it all the way back to the boat. You work it a little bit right where it's at, and then you bring it back to the boat. You might only work it 25-30% of the cast, And to me, a popper is pretty much the same thing. So it gives you that versatility. Something like a popper, a devil's horse, a boy howdy. Those to me all work kind of in that same vein. Again, I'm not using them to cover water. I'm using them as a strategic target bait. I want to put them right in a specific spot. I want to work just that spot, and then I'm going to bring it back to me. Now, lastly, we've got a type of topwater bait that I don't see anglers using out on the water nearly as much, and that is a finesse type of topwater like this Heddon Baby Torpedo. And the thing that I love about these is the versatility that you get with them. You can work them as a targeted bait, almost like a plopper, cast them out in a specific area, give them a few twitches, and let them sit. And I've got this on my finesse setup. I use this for wacky rigs. I use this for Waco rigs. I use this for small little tiny jigs, and I also use it for light topwater. And the best thing about those Heddon torpedoes is you have, like I said, versatility. You can cast them out there, you can make them pop in space, or you can wind them a little while. Now, like I said, one of the best things about this Heddon torpedo is the versatility of it. It gives you the luxury of fishing it many different ways, and that's why I really like them. You can put them in tight areas and fish them like a popper, or you can crank them to you and they act very much like a bubble trail type bait, like a whopper plopper or a buzz bait. And you can alternate between those types of retrieves. You can work it almost the same way you would a devil's horse, where you lift up on the rod a little bit and get it to bubble for a few seconds and then stop and then leave it there. You can do that very much with a Heddon torpedo. And again, I've got the black baby torpedo here, and I'm working it in a finesse style on my finesse setup, which is just a medium or a medium light rod. Now, another great thing about that finesse setup is I can also put something like this 1/8 ounce buzz bait on there. Now, what does this do? Well, this is great, again, for working those timber piles, those brush piles, those areas where structure and cover are. And I can bring this right over the top. I can run this just a little bit more slowly, and it makes just a little bit less noise, but it's still very vibrant to those bass on a day where you need to have a little bit softer hand. Whenever there's more pressure, there's more anglers, those bass are in a funky mood. Maybe on a day after a storm when you've got the bluebird skies and high pressure, high barometric pressure. This right over the top of those laydowns, right across that rock pile, right across that rubble pile, this can be amazing for getting those really, really tough strikes. Another thing that I like, well, everybody's favorite old school topwater, the good old jitterbug, and a black jitterbug. Now, you can get these in a million different colors, and I have them all, but a good old black jitterbug is really hard to beat. Again, we're talking about white and we're talking about black. And again, this is going to be on a finesse type of setup where I'm using it with a 10-pound braid on the medium, light to medium type of rod with a more moderate tip. Now, if I'm doing topwater, more than likely I'll have that 10-pound braid matched with an 8-6 pounds, something like that, monofilament leader, and that helps everything stay buoyant, and it helps me work something like this. Now, the thing you've got to remember about a jitterbug, if you have trouble working a jitterbug, if it does not do what you think it needs to do, it's because you're working it too fast. These blow out super easy. You want them walking over the water, and you can hear bloop, 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 bloop. Yes, with the goofy noises again, but you can hear that noise as it's coming across the water. It kind of walks sideways, back and forth, and it does this as it's going. But if you try to burn it, you try to crank it, you'll blow it out, and it won't do anything except spin in the water. So work these pretty slow, and you'll find that, well, it's one of the most reliable all-time topwater baits, and this is why people still love a jitterbug. So there you have it. Some ways and methods to fish your topwater baits you may have never considered before. If you use your topwater baits in different ways for different purposes with a more tactical approach, you'll find that not only will you get more topwater bites, but you'll get more bites in general. Give it a try. Thanks for watching Lowbrow Fishing. We'll catch you in the next one.